You're listening to Discutafel Podcast, your green audio about gardening, the outdoors and sustainability.
You managed to reach my garden in the Netherlands, and my garden is in 's-Hertogenbosch, a city in the southern part of the country. You reached episode number 196 of Discutafel Podcast. It's online since the 30th of January 2025. And I'm your podcaster, Ivonne Smit. Welcome. This is the third episode in our short series recorded in March 2024 in the University of Bristol Botanic Garden it was. And we publish all episodes in January 25. The first one was number 194. It was the one where you can walk along with me on a tour through parts of this botanic garden in Bristol. And the second one, you guessed it right, it was 195. In that one I take you on a journey through time while enjoying the land plant evolution displays. And now it's time for the third and last episode in this series. We're talking Chinese herbs this time, in a part of the botanic garden which became one of the highlights to me personally. We're also going to share some scientific knowledge with you, so perhaps it's a good idea to take some time to relax, sit back and enjoy.
Discu coverage. The University of Bristol Botanic Garden contains about 4,500 species of plants. They attract tens of thousands of visitors a year, and there's a Friends of the Botanic Garden group with about 3,000 members who support this garden. And there's also an active community of 120 volunteers. We're here at the Botanic Garden of the University of Bristol, which is just across a student accommodation near the so-called Bristol Downs, a big, open and green area in the outskirts of town. Just walk along with me and we'll tell you something about the plants and the displays which can be enjoyed here.
Yeah, that's me again, with a small introduction from my own city garden. Because in this episode I'd like to take you to the Chinese Medicinal Herb Garden in Bristol. And right after the start of this coverage and at the end of it, you'll hear me giving extra information from the studio. We enter this theme area of Chinese medicinal plants. We enter this area while walking on a path where I discover special plants, tea plants. Are you coming along with me? In a corner of the Botanic Garden, we discover a small tea terrace. They seem to be developing a small
demonstration tea planting as a cultural element of the traditional Chinese herb garden, which is here. They try to grow tea cultivars here that are hardy in the UK, and plants which highlight the culture and the history of tea growing and drinking in China. Of course, there are also more scientific purposes here, because they want to focus on the chemical reactions that take place in the tea making process that give the quality, the taste, the aroma and medicinal qualities. Back after my trip to Bristol, I read something more about this tea planting in the University of Bristol Botanic Garden, because it's not easy to grow tea plants in the UK. As I understand, this botanic garden imported the soil with which these shrubs were planted, and they imported the soil from Norfolk. Tea requires an acidic soil. It won't grow well in Bristol soil. They also created a deep rooting zone here in Bristol to trap moisture. When you want to grow tea successfully as a business, you need an annual rainfall of at least 1,500 millimeters, and the average annual rainfall there in Bristol is about 1,000, so they apply mulches and add additional irrigation. Why taking all the trouble to grow these tea plants in this botanic garden? Well, as I said before, they want to focus on the chemical reactions that take place in the tea making process, which gives the drink its taste, its aroma, and its medicinal qualities. But they also want to try which tea cultivars are hardy in the UK. And they want to highlight the culture and history of tea in China. And last but not least, they want to research the problems the tea industry faces in the light of rising demand and of climate change. They want to find more sustainable and robust solutions for these problems. So let's go back to the Botanic Garden. So these are some of the reasons they have started to create a mini tea terrace with plants of Georgian and Nepalese tea cultivars, which are both hardy in the UK. These plants have been provided by the Scottish Tea Growers Association, and we smiled a little when we saw this on this information sign. How nice that there is a Scottish Tea Growers Association. We had no idea. Tea originates in Yunnan province in China. It was originally used as a medicinal herb, and it contains several antioxidants and caffeine, and its effect is to cool the body and to harmonize digestion. Some plants in this Yunnan province, some tea plants, are over 1,000 years old. And the origin of tea drinking is thought to be at least from the 2nd century BC in the Han Dynasty in China. The black tits in the Prunus incisa, or the Mount Fuji cherry. Personally, for me, the traditional Chinese herbs garden here in the Botanic Garden of the University of Bristol is one of the highlights. It's a garden which is divided in several parts according to the function of the plants for your body. It's all about ethnopharmacology here, and ethnopharmacology is the scientific study of substances used medicinally by different ethnic or cultural societies. And it is estimated that about 40% of all drugs used in modern medicine have their origins directly from herbs used in traditional herbal medicine. So I'm standing here in this Chinese herb garden next to a vase, where a container, big container, where they have planted Japanese knotweed, and it's very obvious why they planted this plant in a container, because it is considered to be the most invasive weed in the UK. But it is, however, also a herb known because of the old Chinese found out that this is a medicinal plant. It's good to for people who have a high blood pressure, for example, or bronchitis. So modern analysis confirms the traditional use of this plant really has something of truth in it. The garden here in Bristol has the largest collection of traditional Chinese medicinal herbs in Europe. And in this garden also a big specimen of the ginkgo biloba, one of the very old trees of the world. The herbs here in this garden are arranged according to the traditional use of these plants, where the yin and yang qualities are also attributed to specific organs in the body. Some herbs are here to correct deficiencies in the body, and other herbs are recognized for their power to reduce excesses in the body. And the principles of Chinese medicine were laid down 3,000 years ago through close observation of symptoms and diseases in different seasons and in different climates. They are summed up in the ancient symbol of the forces yin and yang, where yin represents the winter, coldness, inactivity, contraction, and yang symbols energy, warmth, movement, expression. And the Chinese doctor uses a patient's symptoms to determine the constitution of this patient. And it is a process similar to gardening, where you are trying to provide the correct balance of yin and yang expressed as warmth and cooling, moisture and drying, energizing and calming. The concept of wind is unique to Chinese medicine. It does not mean gas, but it means disruption of the normal flow of qi, which is the energy, the life energy. And wind is seen when we catch a virus or an allergy, but also in extreme cases such as epilepsy, where the wind has reached hurricane proportions. Let's see if we can recognize some of these plants and learn about their function in the body and in traditional Chinese medicine. There's one bed here which says these plants function to expel wind, and one of those plants is the Allium fistulosum, better known as spring onion. Another function is to calm mind, and the Hypericum perforatum or St. John's wort is doing that for you. A plant which can help to move the blood is the Rosa chinensis or the China rose. Another familiar group here in the Chinese garden is that of the tree peonies. You may know them. The tree peony retains a tree-like shape after the leaves die down in winter. But there are also herbaceous peonies, and they disappear underground. And this may be why it is a less prized plant as a symbolic plant, but it is even more prized as a medicine, because this herbaceous peony underground has large fleshy roots to store energy, and this energy store is used in a major Chinese herb known as Bai Shao, and this herb tonifies the blood. Many beautiful flower cultivars of herbaceous peonies have been produced outside the UK, also in the UK nurseries, and the peony garden here displays UK grown peonies. Thanks for listening to this coverage of the Botanic Garden of the University of Bristol. If you would like to know more about these gardens, visit our website discutafel.nl. We publish a show note with more information on the gardens. At that point, we left the Bristol Chinese Herb Garden by walking through a striking circular moon gate. But before ending this Discutafel podcast episode about the traditional Chinese Medicine Herbs Garden in Bristol, I'd like to share some information I read on a display in the garden about the way Western drugs work and how we could use herbs to tackle the problem of drug resistance. Single chemical drugs used in, for instance, the Western world, they use it to kill bacteria and parasites, and they have precise and powerful actions. But according to a display in the garden, and I've heard this before, their single action does make it easier for the parasite to evolve a defense. And this has contributed to a dangerous situation where bacteria and parasites have become resistant to drugs. Plants have evolved many layers of defenses to fight bacteria and other creatures that are harmful to them. And these are rather complex defense systems. It takes time to investigate how they work. In the end, our understanding of these chemical defenses in plants may result in new treatments for drug resistance. In some cases, it has been found that adding a small dose of a herb combined with a drug can make the drug effective again.
Globally, around 80% of the world's population uses herb medicine as its primary healthcare and not Western drugs. For more information and scientific references, the information sign in the garden refers to the Register of Chinese Herbal Medicine. And in the show note of this Discutafel podcast episode, you'll find their website address. Discu finish. You hear the birds singing in my garden. Isn't it beautiful to hear the birds singing again after the winter silence? I know this episode contains some scientific and cultural facts, which may not always be easy to digest. But at Discutafel we like to broaden our own view and that of our listeners, and I hope you enjoyed the coverage. One of the advantages of listening on demand is, of course, that you can always listen twice, isn't it so? So please do. And visit discutafel.nl, as I suggested before. Don't hesitate to contact us when you have remarks. Thank you very much for listening to Discutafel podcast. As you know, most of our episodes are in Dutch. However, during our stay in Bristol, we also visited the famous Botanic Garden in Oxford, and we made recordings there too. So you may expect a few shows in English about this garden in, say, March 2025. In the meantime, let's go outside, and until next time.